Eliza Hartfield sat at the kitchen table of her cozy cottage on the edge of the cliffs, looking out at the gray waves crashing against the rocks below. The smell of the sea air mixed with the aroma of fresh coffee, but there was an unsettling quietness in the house. She picked up her phone, scrolling through old pictures of her daughter Siobhan, laughing at the beach house, the two of them side by side, so close, so full of promises for the future. Siobhan, her only child, had always been the light of her life. She'd raised her alone after Eliza's husband, Robert, had disappeared without a trace when Siobhan was just 8 years old. It had been a strange, sudden departure that still haunted her. His papers gone, his research abandoned, the house left empty of answers. The police had called it a case of voluntary disappearance, but to Eliza, it was just another unresolved chapter in a life filled with questions. They'd always been a team, Eliza and Siobhan. Every day was an adventure, every small achievement a reason to celebrate. Eliza had worked part-time as a museum curator while Siobhan grew up strong and independent, excelling in school, art, and later in her career in marketing. Life had been difficult, but they'd made it work. They'd relied on each other. Eliza sighed as she looked down at the phone again. She dialed Siobhan's number, her fingers trembling just slightly. It had been weeks since they'd had a real conversation. Siobhan had been distant lately, fewer calls, fewer visits. It had all started when she met Trevor. "Hello, Mom." Siobhan's voice on the other end was cheerful, but something about it sounded forced. "Sweetheart, how are you? I feel like we haven't talked in ages." "I know, I've been busy, things are hectic, wedding plans and all." There was a slight pause. Eliza's heart skipped a beat. Wedding plans. She hadn't been told anything about a wedding, not even a hint. "I didn't realize you were getting married already. When is it?" Siobhan let out a small laugh, though it sounded strained. "We already got married, Mom. It was just a small ceremony, nothing big. We only invited people who really matter. Just send the beach house keys and stop being so dramatic." Eliza blinked, a cold wave of shock washing over her. "You already got married," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The weight of the words felt like a stone in her chest. This was the first she was hearing of it, the first time she'd heard anything beyond the surface. "Yeah, it was a private thing. Trevor wanted it that way. We're happy, Mom." Siobhan's voice was clipped, too polished to be real. Eliza's mind spun. Trevor had always been the subject of Eliza's suspicions. The polished, charming man who seemed to enter Siobhan's life out of nowhere and slowly pushed Eliza aside. At first, she had hoped she was just being overprotective, but now... "And you're asking for the keys to the beach house." Eliza's voice felt tight in her throat. She'd never thought she would be in this position. Her own daughter, who had once begged to get married at the beach house, now barely acknowledging her. "Yeah, well, we didn't plan a honeymoon, and Trevor thought it'd be nice if we used the house for a few days to relax. We've always talked about it, and I've told him so much about it." There was a touch of nonchalance in her voice, like this was just another thing on a list to be checked off. Eliza swallowed hard. "Of course. I'll send the keys right over," she said, though her mind was racing. "Is there anything else you need?" she asked, trying to mask the hurt she felt. "No, that's it. Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd understand." The line went quiet for a moment before Siobhan ended the call, her voice quickly trailing off into the background. "I'll see you soon." Eliza sat in silence after the call ended, her fingers still holding the phone, but no longer hearing Siobhan's voice. The truth settled heavily on her chest like a dark cloud. Her daughter had married, kept it a secret, and now she wanted the beach house, the very place where they had shared memories of laughter and love. But this wasn't the daughter she had raised, the daughter who had once told her that she would get married on the beach, barefoot with fairy lights hanging from the dunes. That was Siobhan at her purest, before the influence of Trevor, before the distance. She could feel the hurt creeping in, but more than that, Eliza felt a surge of determination. Siobhan had been manipulated. Trevor had inserted himself into her life like a shadow, pushing Eliza aside, making her seem like an afterthought in her own daughter's life. Eliza would not allow this man to take away the bond they once had. In the days that followed, Eliza made quiet decisions. She would give Trevor what he wanted, access to the beach house, but she would also give him something he hadn't bargained for, something far more valuable than any property or inheritance. Eliza started her search, pulling out old family papers, digging through records of her late husband's work. If Trevor wanted to stake his claim on the Hartfield legacy, he was going to get more than just keys to a beach house. He was about to learn that there were far more dangerous things hidden in the past than a few old family treasures, and Eliza would make sure that the truth would come out, one way or another. The next few days felt like a haze, each moment stretching out in front of Eliza as she meticulously prepared herself for the challenge ahead. Every time she walked past the window overlooking the beach, she thought about the memories Siobhan and she had created there. The laughter-filled summers, the late-night talks by the fire pit, the secret promises made under the stars. But all of that now seemed tainted by Trevor's manipulation. Eliza had always prided herself on being strong, independent. She had raised Siobhan alone, after all, after Robert's sudden departure all those years ago. But the pain of being pushed aside in her daughter's life was different. The wedding, the secrecy, it had been a blow. The worst part, though, was how easily Trevor had managed to isolate Siobhan from the people who had loved her unconditionally for her entire life. The beach house keys sat on the counter, untouched, mocking her in their silence. Eliza hadn't sent them yet. She needed more time, more information. So, she turned to the one thing she was good at, research. She spent hours every evening combing through old documents, searching for any clue that might connect Trevor to her family's legacy. She wasn't sure why she suspected him, but something in her gut told her he was after more than just the house. It was as if he had come into their lives with a purpose, a well-planned agenda. But why? The breakthrough came when Eliza found an old business partnership agreement between her late husband, Robert, and Trevor's grandfather, a man named William Morrison. The deal had been for a commercial property development back in the late 80s, but Eliza recalled her husband being very stressed during that time. Robert had talked about losing money, about a betrayal that had left him financially ruined. She dug deeper. William Morrison had disappeared shortly after the project collapsed, and rumors of financial misconduct swirled around his name. But what she didn't know was how closely Trevor had followed in his grandfather's footsteps. The more Eliza uncovered, the clearer the picture became. Trevor wasn't just looking for a comfortable life with Siobhan. He was eyeing the Hartfield fortune. And the beach house, that was only a small piece of a much larger puzzle. She spent the next few days piecing everything together. There were offshore accounts tied to Morrison's name, accounts that Robert had never been able to trace. And now, Trevor was married to Siobhan, a woman who had no idea that her inheritance was at stake. One evening, Eliza drove to the local law office where Robert's old legal advisor, Patricia Winters, worked. She knew she had to act quickly. Trevor's plan wasn't just about isolating Siobhan emotionally. It was about gaining control over her family's wealth, and he was already halfway there. Patricia greeted her warmly when Eliza arrived, but the moment she heard what Eliza had uncovered, her face went pale. "Eliza, you have to understand," Patricia said, holding up her hands. Trevor's grandfather wasn't just a small-time conman. He was involved in serious financial fraud, money laundering, embezzlement. But there's more. His grandson, Trevor, has been using his knowledge of those accounts to live a lavish life, siphoning money into his own pocket. We need to stop him before he gets any deeper into your daughter's finances. Eliza clenched her fists. How do we stop him? Patricia thought for a moment, her eyes narrowing. We can't do it alone. If you want to protect Siobhan, you'll need to gather evidence, proof that Trevor's been using these stolen funds. And the sooner we act, the better. If he thinks he's untouchable, he'll only become more dangerous. The plan Patricia proposed was simple but risky. They needed to catch Trevor red-handed, and Eliza knew exactly how to do it. Back at home, Eliza reached out to a private investigator named Jason, someone who had helped her husband track down Robert's missing assets before his death. She briefed him on Trevor's involvement in the fraudulent accounts and the fact that Trevor had been gaining access to money that legally belonged to Siobhan. Jason's team worked quickly, and within a few days, they had access to some troubling information. Trevor had been in contact with a financial advisor, someone who had been helping him navigate the hidden offshore accounts. They even managed to get their hands on some recent transactions, large sums of money that Trevor had been funneling into his personal accounts. The picture was becoming clearer. Trevor wasn't just in it for the beach house, he wanted it all. Siobhan's inheritance, her trust fund, everything. And with her emotionally manipulated, he had nearly succeeded. Eliza's heart raced as she read through the documents. They had the evidence now. But there was still one thing left to do, confront Trevor. She wasn't sure if Siobhan would believe her, but she had to try. She couldn't let her daughter go down this path without knowing the truth. The next day, Eliza called Siobhan. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. Siobhan agreed to meet, and Eliza drove to the cafe they had frequented when Siobhan was growing up. When Siobhan arrived, Eliza noticed the distance between them, the coldness that hadn't been there before. Trevor's influence was clear in the way Siobhan looked at her, almost as if she were an outsider in her own mother's eyes. "I know what Trevor's been doing," Eliza began, her voice low but firm. "I know about the offshore accounts, the money he's been siphoning, and I know that he's been using you, Siobhan. He's been manipulating you into isolating yourself from everyone who cares about you." Siobhan's eyes widened, and Eliza could see the conflict building within her, but Trevor had clearly done his work well. "You don't understand, Mom. Trevor's not like that. He's been good to me. We're starting our own life together." Eliza leaned in, her heart aching. "Siobhan, I love you and I've spent my life protecting you. This isn't just about the beach house. This is about Trevor taking everything from you, everything you've worked for. You're his latest target, and I'm afraid you're too close to see it." Siobhan shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "You're wrong. You just don't get it." Eliza stood up, knowing she had done all she could in that moment. She didn't have the power to make Siobhan see the truth, but she would continue fighting for her, fighting for the daughter who had been hers alone and who now needed her more than ever. "I'm not giving up on you, Siobhan," Eliza said softly. "Not now, not ever." As she walked out of the cafe, Eliza felt a quiet storm brewing inside of her. Trevor had no idea what he had just unleashed. This wasn't just about family betrayal. It was about justice, about protecting the one thing that mattered most, Siobhan. And Eliza was ready to make sure Trevor would never get his hands on it. Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that the moment with Siobhan in the cafe had been a tipping point. Despite her daughter's deflecting words, Eliza could see the cracks forming in the emotional armor Trevor had carefully built around her. Siobhan's hesitation, the tear-filled eyes, the defensiveness, it was all a sign that a seed of doubt had been planted. The following days were tense. Eliza continued her research, and Jason's team had been gathering more intel. The picture of Trevor's intentions was now fully formed. He wasn't just trying to ingratiate himself into Siobhan's life for love. He was after her family's legacy. The beach house, her inheritance, everything that could give him access to the wealth he'd been grooming himself to claim. But Eliza wasn't going to let that happen. The beach house wasn't just a property, It was her history, her sanctuary, a place filled with memories of her late husband and the summers spent raising Siobhan. It was a piece of her soul. No one, especially not Trevor, was going to take that from her without a fight. That evening, after a long day spent sifting through old letters and legal documents, Eliza received the call. Siobhan was at home, her voice shaky but determined. "Mom, we need to talk," Siobhan said. "I'm coming over tonight." Eliza's heart skipped a beat. It had been days since their last conversation, and despite everything, she wasn't sure what to expect. She spent the next few hours preparing herself, knowing that what was coming next would either bring them closer or shatter the fragile thread of connection they had left. When Siobhan arrived, she was alone, but there was something different in her eyes, something that told Eliza the walls were starting to crumble. Siobhan had clearly been struggling with the weight of the truth. "I know you're right," Siobhan began quietly, sitting across from her mother at the kitchen table, her hands nervously twisting a napkin. "I've been avoiding it, avoiding you. I thought Trevor was just everything I wanted, but I don't know anymore, Mom. I don't know if I'm being manipulated or if I'm just paranoid." Eliza didn't speak immediately. She simply reached across the table and took Siobhan's hands into her own. The warmth of her touch seemed to ground both of them. "I never wanted to be the one to say I told you so, Siobhan," Eliza said softly. "But this isn't just about me or you, it's about who Trevor really is. And what he's been doing for years. He's not the man he's shown you." Siobhan's eyes filled with emotion, and for the first time in a long time she let her guard down. "What do you mean, Mom?" Eliza took a deep breath and began to explain everything she had uncovered over the last week. The old business deal with Trevor's grandfather, the money laundering, the offshore accounts, and most importantly, the pattern. Trevor had done this before, using the same manipulative tactics with other women, women with family money, women who were successful, intelligent, and vulnerable in ways they didn't even realize. "I know this is hard to believe," Eliza continued, "but Trevor is like a predator. He's been using you to get access to what's rightfully ours, to what's rightfully yours. And he's isolating you from everyone who cares about you to make sure you don't see it." Siobhan sat back, her face pale. She looked as though she were absorbing the weight of it all for the first time. "How? How could I have been so blind?" "You weren't blind, sweetheart," Eliza said gently. "He's good at this. He's been doing it for years, but I won't let him take what's ours. I won't let him take you." A long silence passed between them, the kind that held so much unsaid, so many emotions both women had buried. Finally, Siobhan spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Trevor told me. He told me that he wanted us to be independent, that I needed to stop relying on you so much. He said it was unhealthy for our relationship. I didn't know what to believe anymore." Eliza's heart ached. "That's not independence, Siobhan. That's control. He's trying to erase everything that's important to you, including me." The air between them shifted as Siobhan took in her mother's words. The fog that had clouded her judgment was beginning to clear. She stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the beach house in the distance, barely visible through the trees. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she whispered, "The beach house. I've always wanted to get married there. You know that, but now, I don't know what to do with it." Eliza joined her at the window, standing beside her daughter, looking out at the place that held so many memories. She placed her hand on Siobhan's shoulder, a silent gesture of strength. "You don't have to figure this out alone," Eliza said. "Whatever happens next, we'll figure it out together. We always have." Siobhan turned to her mother, her face etched with both sadness and determination. "I don't want to lose you, Mom. I don't want to lose everything we've built." "You won't," Eliza replied, her voice firm. "But you have to face the truth. Trevor isn't the man you think he is. And if he truly loves you, he'll accept that you need your family, your support system, to be whole. If he can't, then he's not the right person for you." Siobhan nodded slowly. "I need to talk to him. I need to confront him about everything. I'm not going to let him tear us apart anymore." Eliza squeezed her daughter's hand. "I'm right behind you, every step of the way." That night, as Siobhan prepared for her confrontation with Trevor, Eliza felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't over yet. There was still a chance to save her daughter from the man who had manipulated his way into her life. And if Trevor thought he could take the Hartfield legacy, he was in for a rude awakening. The truth had been uncovered, and now it was time for him to face the consequences. Siobhan's heart raced as she stared at the message on her phone, the one she had crafted in a fury of frustration and determination. "I know everything, Trevor. Meet me at the beach house tonight. It's time we talk." She had never written anything so raw, so final. But this time, she wasn't going to back down. She wasn't going to let him dictate the terms of her life any longer. Eliza watched her daughter pace the living room, her nervous energy palpable. "You sure you want to do this alone?" Eliza asked, her voice calm but carrying the weight of concern. Siobhan paused, looking at her mother with a depth of gratitude. "I've got to do this. It's my fight now. I've let him control me for too long." Eliza nodded, a hint of pride in her eyes. "Then let's make sure you're ready." Siobhan had spent the entire afternoon preparing for the confrontation. She'd gathered all the evidence Eliza had unearthed, piecing together Trevor's history, his manipulations, the way he had isolated her from everything that mattered, especially her mother. The beach house, their sanctuary, was the perfect place to confront Trevor. It held too many memories, too much significance for him to just waltz in and claim it. It was hers, and tonight she would fight for it. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the Cape Cod shoreline, Siobhan made her way to the beach house. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was soothing, but her mind was clouded with a storm of emotions. Would Trevor come? What would he say? How far would he go to keep his carefully constructed lie intact? Minutes later, a black SUV pulled into the driveway, its headlights cutting through the twilight. Siobhan's stomach clenched. This was it. Trevor stepped out of the vehicle, his usual smug smile replaced with a look of strained curiosity. He was dressed in an expensive suit, the same way he always dressed to impress. But tonight, his polished demeanor seemed out of place, as if it could unravel at any moment. "Siobhan," Trevor greeted her, his tone measured, too calm. "I wasn't expecting a message like that." "You should have," she replied, her voice steady but with an edge of steel. "Because this is the last time you'll manipulate me, Trevor. I'm done." Trevor raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something like amusement crossing his face. "Manipulate? Siobhan, you're overreacting. You've always been so dramatic about everything." Eliza, who had been standing quietly in the shadows of the porch, watching the scene unfold from the window, felt her heart quicken. She knew her daughter was ready, but seeing it play out in real time made her breath catch in her throat. Siobhan didn't flinch. "I know everything, Trevor. I know about your pattern, about the women you've used. I know what you really want." His expression faltered, just for a second, but it was enough for Siobhan to see the crack in his mask. "Don't talk like that," Trevor said, his voice dropping into something colder. "You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying." Siobhan took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of strength she had. "You've been using me to get access to my inheritance, to the beach house, to everything my mother and I have worked for. You've been playing me, and now I'm done playing along." Trevor's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. He took a step forward, trying to reclaim control, but Siobhan didn't back down. She stood her ground. "You think you're clever, don't you?" Siobhan continued, her voice growing more confident with each word. "You've been isolating me from my family, manipulating me with your perfect life, pretending you cared. But the truth is, you don't love me. You never did. You only love what I can give you." Trevor took another step, his hand reaching for her arm as if to grab her, to force his way into the conversation. But Siobhan jerked away, disgust flashing in her eyes. "Don't touch me," she spat. Trevor paused, realizing that his usual charm was no longer enough to keep her in line. "You think this is over, Siobhan?" He sneered. "You think you've won just by digging through some old files? You have no idea what you're dealing with." Siobhan tilted her chin up, refusing to back down. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with a man who uses women for their money and then discards them when they're no longer useful. But I'm not your target anymore. I'm not your pawn." The tension in the air was thick. Trevor clenched his fists at his sides, his face reddening with fury. But as much as he wanted to lash out, Siobhan could see the fear in his eyes. The truth was out now, and he couldn't hide behind his charming smile any longer. "You're delusional," Trevor spat, his voice low and menacing. "You have no idea what I'm capable of. You think you can expose me and get away with it." Siobhan took a step back, her eyes never leaving his. "I don't have to do anything. You've already exposed yourself. All I had to do was look." She reached into her bag and pulled out the stack of documents she had meticulously prepared. Newspaper clippings, bank statements, legal records, and the photos that Eliza had unearthed, everything Trevor had tried to hide. "Take a good look, Trevor," Siobhan said, her voice hardening. "This is the proof. This is the end for you." Trevor's face drained of color as he glanced down at the documents, then back up at her. His mouth moved, but no words came out. "You're finished," Siobhan said, her voice unwavering. "I'm not your next victim." For a long moment, Trevor said nothing. The silence between them was deafening, the crashing waves in the distance providing the only sound. Finally, Trevor's composure shattered. His face twisted with rage, and he took a step back, his hands up in a feeble gesture of defeat. "You'll regret this," he growled. "I don't think I will," Siobhan replied, her voice strong. "Because I know the truth now, and you can't take that away from me." As Trevor turned and stormed off toward his car, Siobhan's heart pounded in her chest. She had done it. She had faced him. She had won. But the battle wasn't completely over. There was still more to do, more to uncover, more to fight for. Eliza stepped out from behind the door, her eyes filled with pride as she walked over to Siobhan. "You did it," she said softly. Siobhan gave her mother a small smile, her heart still racing but her mind finally at peace. "We did it," she corrected. They stood together, side by side, watching as Trevor's car disappeared down the road. The sun had almost set, but for the first time in what felt like years, there was hope in the air. The beach house was theirs, united, unbroken, and ready to face whatever came next. For the first time in a long time, Siobhan felt like she had truly found her place, right here, beside the mother who had always believed in her. The days following the confrontation at the beach house were like a whirlwind, each one bringing a new realization, a new decision to make. Trevor had left the house that night, his mask of confidence shattered, but Siobhan knew this was only the beginning. The battle wasn't over. It had only just started. That morning, as Siobhan sat at the breakfast table, Eliza walked in, holding a letter. The return address was from a law firm in Boston, a firm she recognized, one that represented some of the most high-profile cases in the state. Trevor's last resort. "Siobhan," Eliza said, her voice uncharacteristically calm, though there was a glimmer of concern in her eyes. "I think you need to see this." Siobhan took the letter, her fingers trembling slightly as she broke the seal. It was from Trevor's lawyer. As she read, her stomach twisted in knots. The letter outlined a plan. Trevor was preparing to sue for control of the beach house, claiming that it was an asset of their marriage and therefore part of the divorce settlement he expected. It was clear that he was going to try and manipulate the legal system in his favor, using his charm and the connections he had. Her first reaction was disbelief. She had expected him to retaliate, of course, but this, to come after what she had built with her mother. No, this went too far. It wasn't just about money or the beach house. This was about everything she had fought for, her independence, her peace, and the final severing of the control he had over her life. "Mom, what do I do?" Siobhan's voice was a mix of determination and fear. "He's trying to take everything from me. Not just the beach house, but the life I've built. All of it." Eliza placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, her grip firm but comforting. "We fight, Siobhan, just like we always do." Siobhan nodded, her resolve strengthening. She wasn't about to let Trevor manipulate her any longer, especially after everything she had learned about his past. The man wasn't just a liar, he was a predator. She had already begun making plans, gathering evidence, piecing together the truth that would expose him for the fraud he truly was. She had the documents, the witnesses, and the knowledge to fight back, and she wasn't going to back down. That afternoon, she called Patricia Winters, the attorney who had been so instrumental in unearthing Trevor's deceit. Patricia had already sent a warning to Trevor's lawyer, but now it was time for a more formal response. They needed to act fast before Trevor could take any more steps toward turning the beach house into a tool for his own gain. Siobhan met with Patricia the following morning, laying out all the information she had gathered. His history of manipulating women, his fraudulent behavior, and the proof that the beach house had been hers long before Trevor came into the picture. Patricia listened intently, nodding at all the right moments, and then looked up from the stack of papers with a determined expression. "We're going to turn this around," Patricia said firmly. "Trevor may have connections, but we have the truth, and the truth has a way of coming to light, especially in a court of law." With Patricia's expert guidance, Siobhan filed a formal counterclaim challenging Trevor's legal right to the beach house. The case was set for trial in just a few weeks. The clock was ticking, but Siobhan felt something inside her shift, a sense of calm determination that she had never experienced before. This was her moment to take back everything Trevor had tried to steal from her, including her peace of mind. As the day of the trial drew closer, Siobhan and Eliza spent long hours at the beach house, preparing for the fight ahead. They reviewed the evidence over and over, making sure they were ready for any legal maneuver Trevor's team might try. But they also spent time together, reflecting on all the good that the house had brought them. The summers spent there, the laughter, the memories of Madison's childhood. It wasn't just a property, it was their sanctuary, and no one, least of all Trevor, was going to take that away from them. The trial day arrived, the air heavy with anticipation. Siobhan walked into the courthouse with Eliza at her side, her heart beating fast but her mind focused. Trevor was already seated at the defendant's table, his usual confident demeanor now tinged with something darker, perhaps even fear. He knew this wasn't going to be like the others. This wasn't just about getting what he wanted anymore. This was about exposing him for the fraud he was. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the judge entered, a woman with a stern yet impartial air. Siobhan's lawyer, Patricia, stood up and presented their case, methodically laying out the evidence. Trevor's lawyer tried to counter, but it was clear they were on shaky ground. The documents, the photos, the testimonies, it was all there. When it came time for Siobhan to take the stand, she stood tall, her voice steady as she described the years she had spent building her life, fighting for independence, and most importantly, protecting the legacy of the beach house. She spoke of the summers spent there with Eliza, the dreams she had for the house, and how Trevor had manipulated her into thinking he cared. The turning point came when Patricia presented the final piece of evidence, an audio recording Siobhan had secretly made during their last conversation at the beach house. Trevor's threats, his casual dismissal of her boundaries, and the clear admission that he had been after the house all along. Trevor's face paled as the recording played, the reality of his manipulation now exposed for everyone to hear. His usual charm and confidence cracked, revealing the truth beneath the mask. By the time the trial concluded, it was clear that Siobhan had won. Trevor's claim to the beach house was dismissed, and his actions were deemed fraudulent. The judge ruled in Siobhan's favor, declaring that the property was hers by right and ordered Trevor to pay restitution for his actions. As they left the courthouse, Siobhan couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. She had won. Not just for herself, but for everything her family stood for. She had faced down the man who had tried to destroy her life, and she had come out victorious. When she returned to the beach house that evening, Eliza was waiting for her on the porch. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the ocean, and Siobhan felt the weight of everything that had happened slowly begin to lift. "We did it," Siobhan whispered, sitting down beside her mother. Eliza smiled, her hand gently resting on Siobhan's shoulder. "No, sweetheart, you did it. You fought for what's yours and you won. This house, this family, it's yours. Always has been, always will be." As the waves rolled in, Siobhan felt a deep sense of peace. The beach house was still theirs, and more importantly, she had her life back. From now on, no one would ever take it away from her again.